3 kilometers from the sky, strapped to a chair, and live to tell the tale. What unimaginable sequence of events must align, or horrifically misalign, to create such a scenario? Our story begins not with a fall, but with a rupture in the fabric of normality, deep within the roaring heart of the Peruvian jungle, where a routine flight became a freefall into nightmare. December 24th, 1971. A date that should have been a prelude to celebration. Juliane Köpke, a 17-year-old German-Peruvian biology student, boards a Lancer flight with her mother Maria, an ornithologist. They are heading from Lima to Pucallpa to join Julian's father for Christmas at his research station in the Amazon. The atmosphere is light, filled with the quiet chatter of other passengers and the steady, reassuring hum of the Lockheed Electra's twin engines. The aircraft, Flight 508, climbs over the majestic Andes, its path charting towards the vast emerald expanse of the Amazon basin. But between them and their destination lies a formidable and ancient adversary of aviation, the volatile, convection-driven weather systems of the tropics. On the horizon, a colossal anvil-shaped thunderhead grows, its dark mass swallowing the afternoon light. The first tremor is subtle, a sudden dip, a shudder through the fuselage. It's the kind of turbulence frequent flyers might shrug off. The seatbelt signs ping on. The pilot's voice, calm but firm, echoes through the cabin, advising everyone to remain seated. Julian glances at her mother, who offers a reassuring, tight-lipped smile, a silent communication between parent and child that everything is under control. Then, the world outside vanishes. The plane is engulfed by the storm cloud, a maelstrom of water and wind. Daylight is snuffed out, replaced by a swirling, oppressive grey. The shuddering intensifies, becoming violent jolts that lift passengers momentarily from their seats, held only by their belts. The roar of the engines competes with a new, terrifying sound, the hammering of torrential rain and hail against the metal skin of the aircraft. Julian's scientific mind, trained by her biologist parents, begins to race, calculating odds, assessing physics. But the primal human instinct of fear overtakes reason. She looks to her mother, her anchor, and sees that anchor itself straining. Maria's face is a mask of controlled terror, her eyes wide, her jaw clenched. The unspoken bond between them now transmits a single clear frequency: dread. Then catastrophe strikes with biblical fury. A searing, blinding flash of lightning illuminates the cabin in a grotesque snapshot. Frozen faces, suspended debris, the simultaneous thunderclap is not external. It is a deafening metallic crack that feels born within the plane itself. In that instant, the electrical heart of the aircraft is shattered. The cabin lights die, plunging everyone into a murky half-darkness, lit only by the eerie, intermittent glow of the storm outside. Chaos erupts. The plane, critically wounded, lurches violently, its nose pitching downward. The orderly world of the cabin disintegrates into a tornado of screaming, crashing, and the terrifying groan of tearing metal. The orderly rows become a vortex. Luggage, food trays, personal belongings are ripped from their places, becoming lethal projectiles whipping through the dark, pressurized space. In the midst of this maelstrom, Julian's universe shrinks to a single point. Her mother. She sees Maria's mouth form a scream, a word, perhaps her name, but the sound is stolen by the vacuum. Their eyes lock for a final eternal fraction of a second. Then, with a horrific screech of sheared bolts, the rows of seats ahead and around her are ripped away. Maria's seat tears loose from the floor and is violently sucked backwards into the black abyss yawning behind them, swallowed by the storm. An instant later, Julian's own world comes apart. A force beyond comprehension wrenches her seat from its moorings. The pressure is immense, crushing, and then a sudden shocking silence, broken only by the scream of the wind. The chaotic noise of the disintegrating cabin is gone. She is outside in the open, freezing air. Still strapped tightly to her 3-seat row, she is tumbling through a void of cloud and rain, utterly terrifyingly alone. Her perception is a nauseating carousel. Sky, cloud, glimpses of a distant green and brown earth spin in a mad blur. Fragments of the aircraft, A wing section, a piece of fuselage fall alongside her, silent companions in the descent. The cold is penetrating, a physical assault that bites through her light summer clothes. Her mind, in a state of sheer shock, struggles to process the impossible reality. She is falling from the sky. The acceleration builds. The air is no longer just cold. It is a solid wall rushing against her, flattening her features, forcing its way into her nose and mouth, making breathing a desperate, gulping fight. The tumbling begins to slow, and her seat stabilizes, orienting itself seat first towards the ground. A grim, aerodynamic inevitability. The world narrows to a tunnel of roaring grey and green. Then the clouds part. And there it is, the Amazon rainforest. From this height, it looks like a vast, textured carpet of broccoli, deceptively soft. But Julian knows, from a lifetime of visits, the truth beneath that canopy. A tangled, impenetrable world of hardwood giants, thorny vines, and shadow. That world is now rushing up to meet her at terminal velocity. In these final seconds, there is no time for a life flashback, for profound last thoughts. There is only pure animal terror and an overwhelming sensory overload. The green mass explodes in detail. Individual tree crowns become distinct, then branches, then leaves. Her body braces instinctively, every muscle coiled against the impact that will surely shatter her. The collision is not a single smash, but a series of violent, successive crashes. The seat unit with Julian strapped to it plunges into the rainforest canopy. It's a natural brake system of unimaginable brutality. Thick branches, some as large as her body, snap like gunshots, battering the seat, cushioning the deceleration in a series of bone-jarring jolts. The world becomes a confusing whirl of splintering wood, whipping leaves, and shuddering impacts. And then it stops. The roaring wind is gone, replaced by an eerie, ringing silence, punctuated only by the gentle patter of falling debris, leaves, twigs, and pieces of shredded metal. The seat has come to rest, wedged at a steep angle in the massive forked branch of a tropical hardwood tree. Julian Köpke is alive. Hanging in a green cathedral 30 feet above the jungle floor, she has just survived a 3-kilometer fall. Consciousness returns not with a jolt, but as a slow, painful seepage into awareness. Her eyes flutter open. She sees her own hands, trembling violently in her lap, still secured by the seatbelt. She looks up, following the path of destruction she carved through the canopy, a ragged tunnel leading to a small circle of grey sky. A single ragged breath escapes her lips, a breath she never expected to take again. Then the pain announces itself. A white-hot fire ignites in her collarbone, snapped clean. A deep searing gash on her right arm oozes blood, soaking her sleeve. Her right knee is swollen, the joint screaming in protest. A wave of vertigo washes over her, a nauseating spin that has nothing to do with falling. She is a catalogue of injuries, each one vying for her attention. Her survival instinct, a thread inherited from her scientist-explorer parents, begins to weave itself through the pain and shock. She takes stock of her immediate world. The seat is a crumpled cage. Miraculously, a small personal bag is wedged beneath it. With immense effort, she frees it, her fingers fumbling with the clasp. Inside, among trivial items, she finds a small crinkled bag of candy. A mundane object that in this context feels like a treasure map to life. She places a single piece of candy in her mouth. The burst of sugary flavor is surreal, a stark, almost offensive contrast to the coppery taste of blood and adrenaline in her mouth. It provides a minuscule spark of energy. Her gaze then turns downward to the forest floor. It is a world away, a dark, damp realm of decaying leaves, twisted roots, and deep shadows. The descent to it is her next impossible task. Movement is agony. Each shift sends stabbing pains through her collarbone and knee. She must escape this metallic perch. With her good arm, she fights with the seatbelt buckle, stiffened by impact and fear. It finally releases with a loud click. Her full weight, previously supported, now falls onto her injured legs. She cries out, gripping the broken branches to keep from plummeting the remaining distance. The climb down is a harrowing ordeal of slips, grunts of pain, and sheer willpower. She uses the network of branches like a broken ladder, testing each one for strength before trusting it with her weight. Bark scrapes against her wounds. Sweat, cold and clammy, mixes with the blood on her forehead, stinging her eyes. The 10 meters feel like a descent into another planet. Her foot, still wearing one flimsy shoe, the other lost in the fall, finally makes contact with the soft, spongy earth of the forest floor. Her legs buckle, and she collapses to her knees, gasping. The air here is different, thick, warm, humid and heavy with the smell of damp soil, rotting vegetation, and a million unseen flowers. She is now truly inside the belly of the Amazon. She looks back up. The hole in the canopy is a distant, fading scar of light, already being reclaimed by the encroaching greenery. There is no sign of the aircraft, no column of smoke, no sound of emergency sirens. Only the oppressive, consuming silence of the jungle, which is not truly silent at all, but filled with a cacophony of alien sounds, the drone of insects, the distant calls of unseen birds, the rustle of creatures in the undergrowth. A primal understanding dawns. She cannot stay here. This spot offers no water, no shelter, and is a potential magnet for scavengers drawn by the wreckage or her own blood. Using a fallen branch as a crude crutch, she pushes herself upright. Every step is a fresh jolt of pain. With no compass, no plan, only a deep-seated instinct to move, she chooses a direction at random and begins to limp away from the terrifying throne of her survival. The Amazon envelops her. It is a wall of green in every direction, vines as thick as her arm, buttress roots taller than her, leaves large enough to be blankets. The air is a steamy bath, making each labored breath an effort. The little light that filters through is tinged green and gold, creating a cathedral-like atmosphere that would be beautiful if it weren't so terrifying. In the distance, a faint, constant roar promises one thing: flowing water. Her injuries, ignored in the adrenaline of escape, now declare themselves with renewed vengeance. The gash on her arm is inflamed, the skin around it angry and red. Flies, drawn by the scent of blood and exposed tissue, arrive in a persistent buzzing cloud. She swats at them weakly, her movements sluggish. Infection, she knows from her biology studies, is now a silent, creeping enemy, as deadly as any predator. Thirst becomes a raging fire in her throat. She finds a small pool of water collected in the hollow of a giant root. It is stagnant, covered with a greenish film, and wriggling with mosquito larvae. Her scientific mind overrides her desperation. Drinking this could mean dysentery, parasites, a quicker death. She turns away, her mouth aching with dryness, and forces herself to keep moving toward the sound of the river. Darkness in the rainforest falls not as a gentle fade, but as a swift, suffocating blanket. The green twilight vanishes, replaced by an absolute ink-black obscurity. The soundscape shifts dramatically. The daytime insects give way to a louder, more frantic, nocturnal chorus. Strange hoots, chitters, and rustlings seem to come from inches away. For the first time, the true, overwhelming loneliness of her situation crashes down upon her. Exhaustion finally wins over fear. She finds a large, hollow log, its interior dry and sheltered from the dew. It smells of earth and decay, but it is a refuge. With the last of her strength, she crawls inside. The space is cramped, barely containing her. Curled into a fetal position, shivering from the night chill and shock, clutching her injured arm to her chest, Julian Kupka spends her first night alone in the Amazon. The fall was only the beginning. The true fight for survival starts now. Dawn brings no relief, only a harsh renewal of agony. Every muscle, every shattered bone screams in protest as consciousness returns. The night's chill has seeped into her injuries, stiffening them. The gash on her arm is now a throbbing, angry red beacon, its edges puffy and warm to the touch. The buzzing of flies is the first sound she registers, a constant, maddening reminder of her decaying flesh. She is a living wound in the heart of the wilderness. Movement is a calculated torture. She inches out of her wooden cocoon, each motion a fresh lesson in pain. Inspecting her arm in the grey morning light confirms her fears. Infection has taken hold. Using collected dew and broad, clean leaves, she attempts to clean the wound, the touch alone making her gasp and her vision swim. She tears a strip from the hem of her dress, a thin cotton barrier against the dirt and insects, and ties it around the injury, a futile bandage for a battle raging within. Thirst is a tyrant, its demand overriding all other pains. The distant roar of the river is no longer just a sound. It is a siren's call, the only clear objective in a world of green confusion. Leaning heavily on her crude crutch, she begins to hobble toward it. Her injured leg drags, leaving a faint, scuffed trail in the soft earth. A trail too subtle for any rescuer, but clear enough for any predator. The jungle does not yield a straight path. She encounters a vast, stagnant swamp, a mosaic of murky water and giant lily pads. Here, the air is thick with the sweet, cloying stench of decay. Movement in the water, a small snake slithering off a leaf, the ripple of something unseen, forces a wide, exhausting detour. Every step away from the direct line to the river feels like a step toward death. The sight of the river is a moment of profound, almost spiritual relief. It is wide, powerful, and brown with silt. She collapses at its edge, ignoring the sharp stones, and plunges her hands into the cool current. The water she scoops to her mouth tastes of earth and life. She drinks until her stomach aches, then carefully rinses her wounded arm, letting the flowing water carry away some of the dirt and pus. It is a small act of cleansing, a fleeting victory. Her gaze shifts to the far bank. It appears less densely vegetated, with glimpses of actual sky. A irrational, hopeful thought forms. Perhaps civilization lies in that direction. The river, an obstacle, must become a path. She begins to shuffle along the bank, searching for a crossing point, a sandbar, a narrowing, a line of stones. She finds a spot that seems promising and steps in. The riverbed drops away sharply. The cold, silty water rises to her chest in an instant, sapping her remaining strength. The current, deceptively powerful, tugs at her legs, threatening to sweep the crutch from her grip. Panic flares. A fall here would be the end. She is not a strong swimmer, especially in her condition. Defeated, she fights her way back to the shallows and stumbles onto the bank, collapsing in a heap of shivering exhaustion. The crossing is impossible. The river, her source of life, is also an impassable barrier. The reality sinks in. She is trapped on this side. Her hope dims. She will have to follow the river's course on foot, through the endless, suffocating wall of jungle. The new strategy is born of necessity. Follow the river downstream. It is the region's natural highway, and it must, eventually, lead to people. She moves just inside the tree line, where the footing is slightly easier than the rocky shore. The signs of other life are everywhere. The rooting marks of peccaries, the distant chattering alarm calls of monkeys high in the canopy, observing this strange wounded creature below. By the third day, a new, more sinister enemy makes its presence known. Red streaks, like sinister rivers on a map, begin to crawl up her arm from the infected gash, tracing a path toward her heart. Blood poisoning. A fever ignites in her core, alternating between burning sweats and racking chills. Her vision swims. Shadows at the edge of the forest seem to detach and move. The rational biologist within her knows what this means. Sepsis, a race against time her body is losing. Hunger joins the chorus of her suffering. She finds a small tree bearing clusters of berry-like fruits. Her mother's lessons echo. Many are mimics, Julian. Color is not a guide. Look at the stem, the leaf pattern. With trembling, feverish hands, she examines them, comparing them to mental images from her childhood. She plucks one, places it hesitantly on her tongue. It is tart, almost tasteless, but not burning or immediately foul. She eats a handful, a desperate gamble for calories. The nights are the worst, cold and filled with terrors. She remembers the principle of fire, warmth, protection, a signal. She finds 2 suitable sticks and attempts to ignite a spark by friction. Her arms, weak from injury and hunger, lack the sustained, vigorous motion required. She tries until her palms are raw and blistered, producing only a wisp of smoke that teases her before vanishing. Defeat. The jungle denies her this basic human tool. A tropical downpour transforms the forest into a cold, dripping cave. She huddles beneath the broad leaves of a heliconia plant, but the rain finds every gap. She is soaked to the bone, shivering uncontrollably. The fever rages against the chill, throwing her body into a chaotic civil war. Each cough sends lightning bolts through her broken collarbone. Sleep is a fleeting, troubled escape into nightmares of falling and screaming. Morning reveals further decay. The infection is winning. Maggots, nature's grim cleaners, have begun to writhe in the necrotic tissue of her wound. The sight is one of utter horror. With a detached, almost clinical revulsion born of survival instinct, she picks them out with trembling fingers. This is not her body anymore. It is a battlefield, a failing ecosystem. Then a miracle, or a cruel trick of the mind. Partially buried in the mud of the riverbank, she sees a dugout canoe, old and waterlogged. Human hands made this. Her heart hammers against her ribs. She scans the area frantically, expecting to see a hut, a cleared path, smoke from a fire. But there is nothing. Only the silent, watching jungle. The canoe is a relic, abandoned. Hope soars and crashes in the same breath. Despair overwhelms her. She sinks down beside the rotting canoe, silent sobs shaking her shoulders. She is hallucinating, losing her mind to the fever, but as her eyes clear, they focus on the mud beside the canoe. There, pressed into the soft earth, are footprints. Not animal, human. Barefoot, recent, leading from the water into the trees. They are real. A new electric energy surges through her. She follows the footprints as if they are a lifeline thrown from heaven. They lead away from the river onto a barely perceptible path, a game trail worn by animals, perhaps used occasionally by humans. And then, cutting through the humid air, a sound more beautiful than any symphony. The distinct rhythmic thwack 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 of an axe biting into wood. Fear, now of a different kind, freezes her. After days of utter isolation, the presence of another human is terrifying. She crouches behind a tree, peering out. In a small clearing ahead, a man is working. He is shirtless, his skin darkened by the sun, methodically chopping branches with a well-worn axe. He is not a rescuer in a uniform. He is a ribereño, a river dweller, a local woodsman. This is her moment. She must speak, or she will die here, unseen. She gathers every ounce of strength, steps into the open end of the trail, and tries to call out. What emerges is a cracked, rasping whisper, barely audible over the insects. Help. Ayuda. The word is a dry leaf scratching against stone. The man pauses, axe held mid-swing, listening. He dismisses it as a bird or monkey. He resumes his work. Julian takes another staggering step forward, a branch cracking under her foot. This time he turns. His eyes land on the apparition before him. A emaciated girl caked in mud and blood, her dress in tatters, her face gaunt and fever-bright. His jaw goes slack. The axe slips from his fingers and thuds into the soft earth. For a long, suspended moment, he simply stares, his mind rejecting the evidence of his eyes. This is a duenda, a forest spirit, a phantom from a story. Then survival instinct and human compassion override superstition. He shouts over his shoulder in a local dialect, calling for others. He approaches her slowly, hands held out in a gesture of peace, his face a mask of awe and pity. From a nearby hut obscured by foliage, a woman and 2 children appear, drawn by his calls. They cluster behind him, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and curiosity. The woman gasps, her hand flying to her mouth. The children hide behind her skirts. The scene is a shocking collision of 2 worlds. Their simple, forest-based life, and this broken survivor of the modern sky. Julian sways, the last of her strength spent. She must convey the urgency, the scale of the tragedy. She forces the words from her cracked lips, in the Spanish she knows. Avión, cayó, the plane, fell. It is all she can manage. The message delivered, her body surrenders. Her eyes roll back, her legs give way, and she pitches forward into darkness, caught just before she hits the ground by the stunned woodsman. She awakens not to the sounds of the jungle, but to the crackle of a cooking fire and the low murmur of voices. She is inside a one-room hut, lying on a woven mat. The woman is gently cleaning her wounds with warm water and a paste made from crushed aromatic leaves, traditional medicine. The pain is still there, but the touch is human, deliberate, kind. A child peeks from behind the doorframe, his curiosity overcoming his fear. The woman brings a gourd bowl filled with a thick, fragrant fish and yucca soup. The smell is overwhelming, triggering a flood of tears. Tears of gratitude, of release, of remembered humanity. She eats slowly, spoonful by careful spoonful, her shrunken stomach protesting the nourishment. It is the first real food in 11 days. Each bite is a sacrament. The woodsman returns with 2 other men from the small, scattered community. They speak in hushed, urgent tones, glancing at Julian. They understand the words avion cayó. They know of the flight that disappeared. A plan is formed. They will take her downriver by canoe to the nearest outpost with a radio, a lumber camp, or a missionary station. The journey to salvation is not over, but she is no longer alone. 2 days of rest, broth, and basic care stabilize her enough to move. Gently, the men carry her to a long, narrow canoe. They line the bottom with fresh banana leaves and lay her down. As they push off from the bank and begin paddling with strong, steady strokes, Julian looks up at the canopy passing overhead. This time she is passing beneath it, carried by the river, not falling through it. The perspective is surreal. Lying in the bottom of the canoe, the world is a narrow strip of grey sky framed by green walls. The rhythmic dip and pull of the paddles is a soothing, hypnotic sound. The roar of the river is a constant companion. She closes her eyes, not in fear, but in exhausted relief. The fight is now in the hands of others. Hours later, the character of the riverbank changes. The pristine wilderness gives way to a cleared area, a lumber camp. Rough-hewn wooden buildings cling to the shore. A radio antenna is visible against the sky. As the canoe approaches, men in boots and work clothes stop their tasks, staring in disbelief at the unexpected arrival. Whispers spread like wildfire. The canoe nudges the dock. Strong arms lift her carefully. They carry her up the muddy bank to the porch of the main building. A man in a sweat-stained shirt, presumably the camp foreman, rushes out. His eyes take in the scene, the local woodsman, the ghostly figure in their arms, and his face pales. He doesn't ask questions. He simply yells for help and holds the door open wide. The wilderness has delivered its secret. The crude safety of the lumber camp is a whirlwind of stunned activity. Julian is laid on a cot in a room smelling of sawdust, sweat, and tobacco. Men speak over each other in rapid, excited Spanish. One man frantically works a large, crackling radio set, adjusting dials, his voice tense as he tries to break through the static. Mayday, repito, tenemos una sobreviviente del vuelo Lanza. The words, we have a survivor, travel as an electric pulse into the ether. A woman from the camp, likely a cook or a spouse, enters with clean water and bandages. Her face is set in determination. She carefully cuts away the filthy makeshift bandage from Julian's arm. When the full, horrific extent of the infection is revealed, the angry red streaks, the deep, suppurating wound, her professional resolve falters. She recoils slightly, a hand flying to her chest, murmuring a prayer. The visual evidence of the ordeal is more terrible than any story. Julian herself exists in a state of profound shock. The frantic energy around her seems muffled, distant. Her eyes track the movements in the room, but they hold a vacant, 1,000-yard stare. The immediate terror is gone, replaced by a deep, bone-weary numbness. She drinks the offered water mechanically, her body present, but her mind still wandering the green labyrinth. The response is astonishingly swift. Within hours, the distinctive thump-thump-thump of helicopter blades reverberates through the valley, a sound of modern authority. All activity in the camp ceases as everyone rushes outside. A small military green helicopter emerges over the tree line, a mechanical dragonfly coming to reclaim the one who fell. The helicopter settles in a clearing, its downdraft whipping up a miniature storm. Before the rotors even fully stop, the door slides open. A man in civilian clothes carrying a medical kit and a soldier in uniform jump out, ducking under the blades. They move with urgent purpose, following the camp foreman who waves them frantically toward the hut. Their faces are set, expecting the worst. The doctor kneels beside her, his demeanor shifting from urgency to focused calm. He checks her vital signs, a weak, thready pulse, feverish skin. He examines her eyes, her wounds. A silent, grave communication passes between him and the soldier. The infection is severe, life-threatening. He prepares a syringe, broad-spectrum antibiotics, pain relief, and administers it. The first real medical intervention in nearly 2 weeks. Time is critical. She is carefully wrapped in a sterile blanket and secured onto a lightweight stretcher. The men from the camp and the rescuers carry her back out into the fading light toward the idling helicopter. The woodsman, his wife, and children stand quietly to the side, watching. No words are exchanged, but their faces hold a mixture of awe, sadness, and a quiet pride. They were the link. Inside the helicopter, the noise is overwhelming, vibrating through the stretcher. As they lift off, Julian turns her head weakly to look out the small window. The rainforest, her prison and purgatory, unfolds below, a vast undulating sea of green that had nearly swallowed her whole. From this safe height, its menace seems distant, even beautiful. She doesn't fight the unconsciousness that the drugs and exhaustion bring. She lets it pull her under, finally safe. She awakens to a different kind of silence, the sterile, beeping quiet of a hospital room in Pucallpa. The contrast is jarring. White walls, crisp sheets, the soft glow of medical monitors. Her arm is properly cleaned, sutured, and bandaged. An IV drips fluids and antibiotics into her vein, but even in sleep, her body remembers. She twitches, murmurs, trapped in dreams of falling and endless green. The door opens softly. Her father, Hans Kupke, the renowned zoologist she was traveling to see, enters. The confident scientist is gone, replaced by a gaunt, grief-stricken man. His eyes are red-rimmed from days of hopeless searching and mourning. He approaches the bed as if it holds a mirage. Gently, he takes her uninjured hand in both of his. When her eyes flutter open and recognize him, a silent sob racks his frame. His daughter, miraculously, impossibly, returned from the dead. She tries to form a word, her lips cracked and dry. A single breathy question escapes. "Mama." It is the question that has haunted her since the moment the seat was torn away. Her father's face crumples. He has no answer that can bring comfort. He simply lowers his forehead to her hand, his shoulders shaking. His silence tells her everything. The miracle is partial, tempered by profound personal loss. The following days are a slow, painful climb back from the brink. Nurses change her dressings daily, the wound slowly beginning to show signs of healing, the angry red streaks receding. The fever breaks, leaving her weak but clear-headed. She eats tiny portions, her stomach slowly relearning its function. Her body, resilient beyond belief, begins the long process of repair. Authorities and a trusted journalist are allowed in. They need to understand what happened to Flight 508. Her father stays by her side, a protective presence. Julian answers in a flat, emotionless monotone, as if reciting something that happened to someone else. She describes the flash, the tearing sound, her mother vanishing, the tumbling silence, the canopy rushing up. The trauma is still too raw. She recounts facts, not feelings. As she grows stronger, the outside world intrudes. A newspaper is brought to her. The headline screams, "The Sole Miracle." Below it, a list of the other 91 victims. Her finger traces the newsprint, coming to rest on one name, Maria Kupke. The final brutal confirmation, the miracle of her survival is forever intertwined with the tragedy of her mother's loss. Months later, in a television interview, a more composed but forever changed Julian faces the inevitable question. The host leans in, asking softly, "How did you survive? What was the key?" She pauses, her gaze turning inward, sifting through the memories of pain, terror, and instinct. Her answer is simple, almost absurd, yet profound in its honesty. The seat, the canopy, and the candy. A trivial bag of sweets became a psychological lifeline, a symbol of a mundane world that still existed. Driven by an unpayable debt of gratitude, Julian and her father later organize a trip back to the remote area. They travel by river, retracing her path in reverse. They find the small settlement. The woodsman and his family emerge, initially shy, then breaking into smiles of recognition. The reunion is quiet, filled with handshakes and unspoken understanding. The saviors meet the saved, on equal terms. She asks to be taken to the spot where she collapsed. Standing there, no longer a broken refugee but a guest, she looks down the faint trail she had stumbled upon. She places her hand on the rough bark of the tree she had hidden behind. The floodgates open. For the first time since the crash, she allows herself to weep. Great heaving sobs of grief, terror finally released, and overwhelming gratitude for the simple, life-saving fact of a man chopping wood. Back home, the physical scars begin to fade into tough pink tissue. She often touches the large scar on her arm, not with disgust, but as a tactile memory, a map of her journey etched onto her skin. She sits with her father and, using her knowledge of biology and her harrowing experience, helps sketch a map of her approximate route, contributing to the understanding of the crash site's location and the final moments of the other passengers. In a powerful testament to the human spirit, Julian does not turn her back on the wilderness that nearly killed her. She follows in her parents' footsteps, becoming a biologist. We see her years later, back in a forest, not the Amazon, but another, wearing field clothes, examining a plant with calm, scientific detachment. The jungle is no longer just a monster, it is a complex, brutal, and beautiful system she respects and studies, having seen both its indifferent cruelty and its life-sustaining power. The documentary shows real archival photos of Juliane Köpke as an adult, a composed, thoughtful woman. The camera pans over scientific papers and books bearing her name, Dr. Juliane Köpke. Her survival was not an ending, but a redirection. She dedicated her life to understanding the very ecosystem that had tested her to the absolute limit, ensuring her parents' legacy in science endured through her. Our final visual is a slow, sweeping aerial shot over the boundless Amazon rainforest. It is serene, majestic, and impenetrable. The sound of the helicopter from earlier fades away, replaced once more by the timeless, haunting roar of the jungle. A sound that is both a lullaby and a warning. It is a place of infinite life and sudden death, of profound beauty and utter indifference. To understand the sheer scale of the miracle, one must look at a map. The path of Lancer Flight 508 is a short, unassuming line from Lima, abruptly ending in a vast blank space on the eastern slopes of the Andes, one of the most remote and inaccessible regions on the continent. In that blank space, marked by no roads or towns, a 17-year-old girl began her odyssey. Forensic analysis later suggested a crucial factor: the specific design of the three-seat row she was strapped to. It is believed the seats acted as a crude, life-preserving cocoon, shielding her vital organs during the initial breakup and the violent descent. The very thing that trapped her also cradled her. Engineers and survival experts theorize that the seat unit likely reached a degree of aerodynamic stability during the fall, perhaps tumbling at first, but then orienting itself in a way that increased drag, slowing its final descent speed just enough to be non-instantaneously fatal upon hitting the canopy's natural braking system. Her survival was a series of such infinitesimal odds. The rain-soaked canopy was more pliable than dry, brittle branches would have been. The immense biodiversity of the Amazon meant a denser, multi-layered ceiling of vegetation to absorb the impact, a natural safety net that a pine forest or open field would not have provided. Her knowledge, absorbed osmotically from a childhood with biologist parents, was her invisible toolkit. It was not detailed survival training, but a fundamental understanding of ecological principles. Why stagnant water is dangerous, how to tentatively identify some non-poisonous fruits, that flowing rivers are lifelines. This subconscious library guided her few critical choices. And then the human element. The local woodsman and his family represented a way of life in harmony with the jungle. Their footprint was not a mark of conquest, but of existence. Their decision to help a terrifying, spectral figure, driven by compassion, not expectation of reward, was the final, essential link in the chain of survival. They were the needle in the haystack that she found. The wreckage of Flight 508, what little was found, tells its own grim story. Scattered over miles of dense forest, it spoke of a catastrophic mid-air breakup. The search for other possible survivors was called off after days, the jungle refusing to give up most of its victims. Julian's account remained the primary window into the final moments. In her later years, speaking to students, she addresses the question of fear not as a weakness, but as the essential engine. Fear was the fuel, she would say. It was the primal energy that kept her moving when reason said to lie down and die. It sharpened her senses, suppressed the unbearable pain just enough to take the next step, and then the next. The final close-up is on the eyes of Dr. Julianne Köpke. They hold a universe of experience. The ghost of the terrified girl is still there, deep within. But overlaid is a profound resilience, a quiet wisdom forged in the most extreme of crucibles. They are eyes that have seen the abyss, not from the edge, but from its very bottom, and have slowly, painfully, climbed back into the light.